The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website.
Hello, I'm Lita Powell Drake, and today we have L. Kent Wolgamut of the Lincoln Journal-Star, and he's going to tell us all of the wonderful stories that he writes. I hope you'll stay with us.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I'm Kristen Stoes, and I encourage you to stay tuned to hear Judy Arnold, Early Detection Coordinator at Bryan Medical Center, on why we should all take that phrase to heart.
Hello, and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. About a year ago, we had UNL professor Valerie Jones on as a guest to talk about her research into how virtual assistants like Alexa can help alleviate loneliness for some people. She's completed the first phase of the project, and she's here to talk about the results and what the next steps will be. Don't go away. The results are fascinating.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachia. In today's segment, we're going to be talking about suicide and suicide prevention. And we're going to be learning about a topic, or actually a protocol called Question, Persuade, Refer, which is a useful tool to help prevent suicide. Stay with us.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Lita Powell Drake, and today we have a very special guest that you must know from a long time. It is Kent Wolgamut. He is the arts and entertainment editor for the Lincoln Journal-Star for many, many years. And you've been writing for 42 years. How old are you now?
I'm 64, so I started young and haven't had sense enough to quit yet.
Well, we read you in the paper all the time and are really quite impressed. I'd like to think, now let's go back about some of the interesting things that happened to you. Back in the 1980s, you wrote a story about some pigs that had fallen off a big tractor or something on Interstate 80. What happened?
Well, I was actually working as a stringer for the Time Life magazine group. And I believe this was for People, but it might have been for Time. I think it was actually for Time. There was a semi full of pigs that tipped over on the interstate. Right about 72nd, between 84th and 72nd up there in Omaha. And I get a call from New York saying, can you go to Omaha and write a story about these pigs on the interstate? And so I drove up there, and there must have been 200 pigs all over the place. And I wrote a pretty funny story talking to the police officers, because, they're like, we're trained for all kinds of stuff. We're not trained to catch pigs. And you can imagine, you've seen the grease pig race. You're trying to catch a pig. Well, he's going to run wherever they're going to run. And it was great hilarity. And it got me a nice, I think I even got a byline story in the Time magazine in their little features section, and I got a nice check too. So
they didn't give you a pig?
I know, thank God.
You had enough of them. Well, what's the best story you ever wrote?
Well, that's a good question to say story. I'll tell you the one that probably has had the most impact, and maybe it wasn't just one story, was the coverage of the Farm Aid 3 in back in 1987.
Yeah.
And those were great fun, and also I went to Texas to be down there and talk to Willie about whether he was going to have it here. I did a lot of, that would be Willie Nelson. I did a lot of interviews with him, and then actually covered the event and wrote a little bit about that for Rolling Stone as well as for the paper. So I would say that one sort of grouping of stuff would be the biggest one. There's some pretty funny stories go along with that. I talked to Willie so much that he would just call me out of the blue. And that was before we had answering machines at the paper. So people were expected to pick up the phone on the desk next to him. If it was ringing, the person wasn't there. I was away from my desk, the phone rings. Guy walks by and picks it up, and it's Willie. And he thought the guy was pulling his leg, right? It was really Willie. right? And they're like, Willie knows you? And it's like, well, I talk to him once a week. I suppose he's going to call every day.
Well, now you also interviewed Paul Schaefer. What happened?
Well, he came and played here at the Lead Center. I think it'll be 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago. Anyway, he played with the Nebraska Jazz Orchestra, and Paul, led Letterman's band, but he also does the music for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions, and he's been in movies and all kinds of stuff. And we got to talking on the phone before he came, and he was like, well, I really want to talk to you afterwards. So I went after the show, and somebody from the Lead snapped that picture there. And while Paul and I were talking, he's quite an interesting character because he's done everything and knows everybody.
And so do you. I know that I've traveled all over the United States too and seen you on all the airplanes. How far do you go?
Oh, I haven't gone as much recently, but I've done New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Austin, Kansas City. I'm trying to think, Denver, Nashville. I guess that'd be the most of them that I've actually gone to for work. More Austin and New York probably than any of the other, and Kansas City, of course, you can drive to, but as far as the airplane ones, probably Austin and New York more than the others.
What is Rick Springsteen doing sitting on your lap?
Oh, he was playing at the Pinewood Bowl 2 years ago, I guess it was, and he comes out in the audience. Well, I saw him coming out, but I was taking notes, right? So I was writing something down, and I look up, and he's in the row ahead of me singing, and I knew he was going to do it, and I was like, don't do it. And of course, he sat right down on me, and a photographer from a internet service called Go Venue was there and took my picture, and that's how that picture ended up existing. But that Rick Springfield on my lap, that's the one and only time that's ever happened.
Well, now, how about the concerts? I heard that they are going to be returning in Lincoln, the Pinewood Bowl and other places. Is that true? And tell us about it.
Absolutely true. This last week, Red Rocks out near Denver put out a statement that they were going to do events this summer, concerts, right? Those things don't happen in a vacuum. So a lot of artists that play there, or some actually play Lincoln on the way to or from, which tells you those shows are starting to come out. And it's a virtual certainty that you'll see concerts at Pinewood.
But in person, how about in person?
Oh yeah, they'll be here in June, and then when you get to September, October, you'll see concerts in the Pinnacle Bank Arena. So things will start to get back to what they were, and then in 2022 is when you'll see a lot of the, like Elton John is still scheduled for that arena show, and you'll see more of the heritage acts, as they call them, come out then rather than come out now just for safety's sake. When your band members are all in the 60s and up, and the audience is primarily 50s and 60s and up, they're being pretty careful about, not coming out until everybody's vaccinated and things are a little safer.
Okay, tell us about the Arts Journalism Institute for the Visual Arts. That was in 2009. What happened?
That was a State Department program. What happened was that the Bush administration had developed a program to bring in Islamic journalists from around the world. The Obama administration scrapped that and turned it into a thing where you had both American and international journalists. There were 24 of us that spent basically 3 weeks in Washington, D.C., New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore doing visual art stuff and some film. And then, I took a few of them out to see some music at night. And I have no idea on earth how I got selected to be one of the 12 Americans. You applied and you got the letter saying, or email saying you're accepted. Here's your plane ticket, here you go. And it was great fun for one thing, and really illuminating to get to see all this. But also we've made friends with people from all over the world, which even the State Department people said was part of the idea behind it. So, and it only ever happened once. So I'm one of the 12 Americans that were part of that.
Well, I always see you in your hat. In fact, I'm looking at today's paper, and there you are, Kent Wolgamott, in your hat. Why do you always wear your hat? You mean inside, outside?
I don't wear it all the time inside. Sometimes I do, but outside I do all the time. And the main reason, well, I started wearing hats even when I was a kid. When I was in college, I'd wear hats. But that and spending a lot of time outside doing concerts and sporting stuff, once you've sunburned your head once, you won't ever do it again. And that was kind of the starting point. And then I discovered these Trilby hats is what they're called. And I probably
what?
30 of them downstairs.
You have 30 hats?
Yeah, easy.
There's one of them. I love that. Okay, as you well know, there used to be 4 newspapers in Lincoln a long time ago, and everything has changed right now. I mean, fewer people are subscribing to the newspaper, and the young people really don't use the newspaper. So I'm very concerned. What do you think is the future for the Lincoln Journal-Star? What's going to happen?
Well, I two things. I think that there is. I think things have stabilized a little bit economically for the papers, at least prior to the pandemic, and you would think that some of that will come back. I think what you'll see is in the next 10 years or so, the number that I've always used is when all the people who grew up only with computers, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
To be in their 40s and 50s, you'll see that physical paper go away because they never read the paper, right? They didn't grow up reading the paper. They grew up, if they read it on the online, on the computers and phone or whatever. So once that demand for the physical paper goes away, you'll see it exist as a web entity, I guess you would call it, which I personally like the physical paper.
I do too. Right?
And so but that's not gonna happen overnight. I would say another 10 years. And as far as economically, the reason that the cost has gone up so much is that the advertising has disappeared.
Yes, I've been aware of that. And I like to see those ads.
So would I. If you know anybody that wants to buy one, let me know. But so it's changed to a subscription-based model, and that's why those ads aren't subsidizing it anymore.
Well, I'm looking at the paper right now, today's paper, and there's a story about the concerts coming back, perhaps, which is really exciting. And it's written by L. Kent Wolgamott. What does the L stand for?
The L stands for Lloyd. And the reason it's there is that was also my father's name. He was Lloyd Otis, and my mom saved me from being Lloyd Otis Jr. and named me after the neighbor kid. And that's not a joke. The neighbor was named Kent Battelle.
What was his name again?
Kent Battelle
Patel.
was my neighbor, and my mom named me after him, I'm sure. Anyway, I never used that name growing up in Curtis. I never used Lloyd. I was always Kent. And when I came to university, I would put L. Kent on my papers. And then I saw it in print and went, hey, I like that. So that's where that is, what that is.
Well, I like it. Whatever you call yourself, I like it. And I read your paper every day. Thanks so much to Kent Waldman of the Lincoln Journal-Star. And don't forget, it's never too late to live and learn more about our local newspaper.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Early detection and prevention is what my guest is here to talk about today. I'm Kristen Stoes, and I'm so pleased to welcome Judy Arnold, Early Detection Coordinator at Bryan Medical Center. Judy, welcome to Live and Learn.
Thank you for having me, Kristen.
Wonderful to have you here today.
Good.
As we begin to talk, what do you want most for our viewers to think about?
The importance of prevention and early detection in heart and circulatory disease.
And it is so important to think about that well ahead of problems.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. We are focusing then today on 4 different screening tests, all of which can be set up at one time through the Early Detection Center. Let's start with atrial fibrillation screening, which is more commonly referred to as AFib. What symptoms would someone have that would make them think of testing for this condition?
Some of the main symptoms that they may feel are heart palpitations or kind of a fluttering in their chest. They may have very fast, rapid heartbeats, irregular pulse, definitely some dizziness, weakness, possibly chest pain, but probably more commonly shortness of breath and some significant fatigue.
So that would definitely be a clue that they should be
Checked
doing
out.
something.
Yes.
What can this condition cause, and why is it so important to diagnose it early?
Well, atrial fib can cause clots to form in the left upper chamber of the heart, and those clots can travel through the heart circulation up into the brain and can cause a stroke. So that is a big concern.
Yes, you want to head that off at the pass
For
before
sure.
it happens.
Yes.
How do you test for this condition then?
So in the Early Detection Center, we run a rhythm strip, which is created by placing 5 electrodes on the chest and the side. And this looks at the conduction of the electricity through the heart muscle and allows us to identify the heart rhythm.
And this is a very simple procedure
Yes,
to attach
very
those.
simple and painless.
Yes, yes. We will be putting up a sample of 2 different rhythm strips. Could you please explain what we are looking at and what you are looking for specifically that could indicate an irregular heartbeat?
Okay, so in the first 2 strips there, it's the normal heart rhythm. So we're looking at waveforms on the EKG, and those waveforms correspond with the contraction of the heart muscle. So the very small one at the beginning of that complex is when the atria or the upper chambers contract. The large one is when the ventricle or the lower chambers contract. And then that third waveform is when they both reset and get ready for another impulse. So that whole complex is repeated over and over again, and it should be equal distance apart. And that's what a normal heart rhythm looks like. The second tracing there is of atrial fibrillation, and you can see that it's very different than the normal heart rhythm. So in atrial fibrillation, we have multiple atrial contractions or even some fibrillatory waves, which is basically the atria just kind of quivering. It's not even contracting completely. And then the ventricle does respond to impulses, but we get an irregular ventricular response. So that's where our irregular pulse comes in. We can get very fast heart rates with atrial fibrillation.
Wow. That's a lot of information to get from a strip.
Yes.
Yeah. And we do need to make the point, though, that this information is not a diagnosis, correct?
Correct. That's true. Basically, we give the participant, and when they come in for the screening, we give them a copy of this rhythm strip, and we strongly encourage them to take that to their primary care provider for further assessment.
Okay, all right, that's a good point to make. Are there treatments then that could help with AFib if it's indicated?
Yes, definitely. One of the first things that they want to do to treat this is, since there is possibility for clot formation, is to put them on blood thinners. So their primary care physician or the cardiologist would put them on blood thinners. As I said, they can have very fast heart rates, so many times they will use a medication to control that heart rate. And then we want to try to get them out of atrial fib and back into that normal heart rhythm. So we can use medication to do that conversion back to that normal heart rhythm, or they can do what's called a cardioversion. And that is an electrical shock to the heart, which basically resets that primary stimulus point in the heart to try to get them back into that regular rhythm.
Right, right. So it really is important to diagnose this early, because there are treatments that can head off more serious problems later on.
Absolutely, because sometimes the first symptom of atrial fib can be a stroke, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, no, we don't want that for any reason. The second test then we're going to be looking at will be for an abdominal aortic aneurysm. What is this?
Okay, an abdominal aortic aneurysm, or what we call a AAA, is the abdominal aorta, first off, is the large vessel that runs from the upper abdomen to just above the pelvis. And it supplies blood to the abdomen, kidneys, and lower body. So an aneurysm of the abdominal aorta is an enlarged area or a weakening of that vessel.
How does lifestyle or a person's family history affect the risk of having this?
Okay, if someone in your immediate family has a AAA, then you are 12 times more likely to have a AAA, to develop a AAA yourself. So, and also lifestyle can affect risk. So those who smoke, have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, history of atherosclerosis or plaque formation in the vessels. If they're over the age of 60, males tend to be more prone to AAAs than do females.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Are there noticeable symptoms that a person would have this?
Well, a AAA often grows slowly without any symptoms at all. So as it grows, some people may notice a pulsating feeling near their belly button, but if there is any sudden onset of pain in their back, their belly, or their side, that may be signs of impending rupture, and they'd need to seek medical treatment immediately.
Yes, absolutely. What is the test done for this condition then?
The sonographers at Bryan, we do an abdominal ultrasound, and so that is done to measure the size of the abdominal aorta.
And this is something I found so interesting. If the aneurysm is quite small, it may just need to be monitored.
Correct.
So the size really is of utmost importance.
Absolutely. So that's why they measure the size of the abdominal aorta. Anything over 3 centimeters is considered abnormal, and that would be something that their physician would definitely need to know about so that they could get monitored.
Okay, all right. Our third focus then is on carotid artery disease. Who is at greatest risk for this?
So again, those that are over the age of 65 are at greater risk. And also again, people that smoke, have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes or heart disease are at higher risk for carotid artery disease.
And again, there could be no advanced warning that someone has this.
Correct. Most people with carotid artery disease experience no symptoms at all. The first signs of this disease, again, may be a stroke, a mini stroke, or a transient ischemic attack, or a TIA. So signs of a stroke are weakness or numbness on one side of your body, slurred speech, facial drooping. If you have any of these symptoms, it's important to call 911 and get to the emergency department right away.
Yes, absolutely. We do have a graphic to put up for this condition.
Okay.
We'll talk about what we're seeing here.
So in the top picture, there is the internal and the external carotid artery, and those are nice and clean. In the bottom picture, you can see there has become plaque buildup in that internal carotid artery, and that's the one that we primarily are concerned with because that takes blood flow from the heart up to the brain.
I was also surprised to learn that this condition is responsible for a high percentage of strokes. Is this
yes,
true?
Yes, about a third. With people with carotid artery disease is responsible for about a third of all strokes. So it's important to get that screened.
That alone should take somebody in to be screened, I think. That's a high percentage.
Yes, it's very high.
Yeah, yeah. Again, a quick and easy kind of screening procedure for this?
Yes, it's an ultrasound of both the right and the left carotid arteries. It just takes about 10 minutes to do that screening.
Okay, all right. One last condition we will talk about then is peripheral arterial disease. Could you please explain this?
Yes, so peripheral arterial disease, or PAD, is a chronic disease in which plaque builds up in the arteries to the legs. So blood flow can become limited or blocked altogether.
Okay, yes, I can see that on the screen. Who could be at risk for this and what symptoms might present themselves?
So PAD is more common in those who are 65 years or older, those that smoke, have high blood pressure, high cholesterol or high triglyceride levels, diabetes, kidney failure, and obesity are also some of the risk factors. Symptoms may include fatigue or a burning sensation in the calves, thighs, hip, or buttocks when walking, and pain in the toes or feet at rest, or a open wound or an ulcer on the toes or the feet that is slow to heal.
Oh, well, that's a long list.
That's a lot of information.
A lot of information, but all very good and very important to know. How is this test done?
So the initial screening for PAD is through what's called an ankle brachial indices. So they basically take blood pressures on the ankle and then on the arm, and then they compare those two.
Okay, so that's a very easy, simple
Yes.
test as well. We will be putting on screen the information. How can someone get scheduled for these tests, Judy?
So to register for any or all of these tests, you can call the number there, 402-481-5121. If you have any questions concerning any of these tests, you can call the Early Detection Center at 402-481-8018.
Are there any age or health guidelines, or does someone need a doctor's referral before scheduling these tests?
No, you do not need a doctor's referral. These are out-of-pocket costs that do not go through insurance. So for all of these, you need to be at least 65 years of age or older, or 55 years of age or older with a personal or family history of smoking, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, family history of heart disease, stroke, abdominal aortic aneurysm, kidney failure, or sudden cardiac death. So there's no age or health criteria for the atrial fibrillation screening.
Okay. And the charges involved are very reasonable for these kinds of tests, and
Yes.
the peace of mind that they give.
Absolutely.
Yes, I definitely want to make that point. Judy, you've done this for some time now. I know you have seen some amazing things that have been found along the way. Do you have a personal story of how these screenings have really saved or certainly impacted a life?
Absolutely. We take our vascular screenings on the road. So we were in Fairbury, Nebraska, with our mobile vascular screening at Jefferson Community Health and Life in October of 2020. We had a gentleman whose wife strongly encouraged him to sign up for the screenings due to some of his health history. He had no symptoms, so he was a very willing participant to come in. He did complete all 4 of the tests, and he was found to have a very large abdominal aortic aneurysm. We confirmed this diagnosis with Dr. Sarah Hargraves, one of the Bryan Hart vascular surgeons, and he was then referred to his primary care provider to be assessed for that. He subsequently met with Dr. Hargraves, and who 3 days later was able to repair the weakened vessel ballooning area of his aorta through a procedure in the cath lab at Bryan Medical Center. So he's doing well. His last checkup with Dr. Hargraves was a good one, and he's feeling fine.
How grateful they must have all been to have done those procedures.
They were very happy to have that result.
And let's just very quickly stress again how simple and easy these tests are, correct?
Very much so, yes, definitely.
Yes. Everybody should have these done. I'm a firm believer. Thank you so much for being with us today. This has just been very helpful, and we thank you for helping all of us continue to live and learn about preventative health practices.
Vulnerable and senior adults might be living in silent fear of elder abuse and financial exploitation. We can do something about it. The Nebraska DHHS recommends that communities maintain and improve resources such as public transportation and senior centers to prevent social isolation. Engage professionals in various disciplines to find solutions to end elder abuse. Every year, June 15 is observed as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, an opportunity to ensure justice for all.
Hello, and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. There are times in life when we or someone we know gets a little older and we find ourselves living alone with not much interaction with others. And the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly intensified this. Researchers at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln have been looking for ways to make living in that kind of environment easier and are having some success. The lead researcher, Dr. Valerie Jones, is here with us today to talk about that research and the results of their initial study and where it goes from here. Valerie, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Valerie, we want to make sure we have a good title for her because it's very impressive. Is an associate professor at the College of Journalism and Mass Communications, also a Fred and Gladys Seaton professor and a fellow at the Nebraska Government and Technology Center. So very impressive. Congratulations on all of that. Let's talk about this project. I have a real personal interest in this project because I have someone who's sort of in this situation, who is living alone and struggling with it in some fashion. And so I'm going to try this. I hope other people will do this as well. Let's talk about the research. You did the initial project. Let's just review a little bit for our audience. Tell us a little bit about where that idea came from, how it all worked out, and we'll talk about the results as well.
Yeah, I studied voice assistants, like these little devices, and how they can be used for advertising and marketing. And as I studied them, I realized that one of their primary benefits was their accessibility, right? You don't have to learn any specific programming, any certain codes. You just interact with it with your voice. And that
comes when you want to.
Whenever you want
it comes on.
Mm-hmm. And that affords a lot of opportunity for a variety of folks, but I particularly thought about there's research that suggests that sometimes aging adults are less interested in or less proficient at learning new programs or new technologies, not across the board, just sometimes. And so I thought this could provide a great way for folks to easily interact with another kind of form of media, to easily access entertainment and games and calling and things like that. And I'd also been reading about the loneliness epidemic. The CDC calls it a loneliness epidemic even before COVID-19. And so those two things seemed like a great opportunity to study how this might potentially help mitigate those feelings of loneliness.
Very cool. And now, I think this is interesting, how you determine when somebody's lonely. So tell us a little bit about that. It's an interesting survey that you ended up giving some of the participants, and this is sort of a long-standing, well thought of survey, right?
Yeah. So we gave a variety of surveys, kind of questionnaires to the participants. In this first study, there were 16 of them. Before the study began and then after the 8 weeks. And one of the things on the survey was a scale that UCLA developed to assess loneliness. And it includes things like, I lack companionship, I'm no longer close to anyone, I'm an outgoing person, no one really knows me well, there are people I can talk to, So a variety of items to help help evaluate if a person is feeling lonely and kind of where they are on that spectrum. And then we could look at the change kind of before we gave folks these devices and after.
Okay, so you got an initial amount of money. I mean, you got a grant through the university to buy some of these devices, and then you worked with Eastmont here in Lincoln. Is that correct? To see if you could get people to volunteer to put this in their room and have some sort of interaction with it. And they took the survey before you put it in, and then after, I think was it 30 days? Is that how long it was?
It was 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay.
So I guess I should say 30 days of interacting with it 5 times a day, and then 30 more days of interacting with it as much or as little as you wanted to, no parameters or requirements.
Okay, and then they took the survey again, and then you came up with the results, and the results were pretty positive, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did find a significant difference in loneliness kind of before and after they started interacting with these, particularly those who interacted with it in big academic word, in an anthropomorphic way. So when you started kind of treating it like a person. So we found that people would say, good morning and good evening, and you're in charge right now, I'm leaving the cats, and things like that, just like we would with a person, right? And that those who started kind of, when you started kind of looking at it as a companion and using those sorts of phrases and pieces of language, that really helped predict your reduction in loneliness.
I liked some of the, you said to get it to act like a person, they like the politeness, they liked some of the reactions, and they liked some of the greetings, good morning, and even good night, that it sort of acted like a person.
Yeah, we did interviews with folks too. And just anecdotally speaking, there were a number of participants, not everyone, but a number of them who, had been living alone for a while and just said that it was nice to not feel alone and to have something or someone say good morning and good night. And a couple of them would set up their kind of own little routines of when they would interact with it, in what ways, to help them sleep, to play music while they went through the mail every morning, and then play headlines from the news. And that gave us a peek into also how it was being used and how it could potentially not replace a person, but maybe ease that sense of emptiness that a lot of us feel sometimes.
We take some of those things for granted. Those of us fortunate enough to be in that situation and have others in the household. But so I just think this is, again, wonderful and fascinating. Now, you are trying to get your results published. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have a manuscript submitted, so we're just waiting for feedback on that. And it's to a journal that focuses on aging and technology.
Cool. Okay. So as is in all research, you have an initial study, and if you have some success, you get to move on and keep working on it, which I know is what you want to do. So let's talk about where we're headed now, because we had success, and now you have applied for some additional grant money, been very successful in getting that money. And so let's talk about where you want to go here, because I think that you have expanded this in some fashion into some new areas.
Yeah, I have. I met some researchers at UNO and UNMC at a conference 2 years ago now, because we were in person and unmasked, which seems unholy now. But one of them focuses on gerontology and technology use in older adults. Another actually did another study using voice assistants and older adults to help manage pain. And then another is in my own college, who's done a lot of work with technology and media use and its effects.
Yeah, let's talk about them specifically, because I know that they are a real integral part of this project. So let's start with Changmin.
Yeah. So Changmin, Dr. Yan, is a researcher in the College of Journalism and Mass Communications, and has a wealth of experience with research into media use, particularly in the public health arena. And so he brought a lot of experience in that regard, and helped us think about how technology can be personalized, how media can be personalized, and how that personalization can have an effect on its influence. Dr. Marcia Shade had been doing research with aging adults and voice assistants to help them mitigate pain and manage pain. So just by giving folks reminders about when to take their medication, it can play music, it can tell jokes, and do these other things that can help manage pain as well. So that was Dr. Shade. And then Julie Blaskowitz-Boron, Dr. Boron, has a wealth of experience working with aging adults in technology, and has acquired a number of grants too. So we all got together and created a new study that looks at loneliness and pain reduction, and whether, and more proactive use of a voice assistant too. So you can develop routines that'll go through a series of actions that you prescribe. So we're gonna have a group of folks that have a kind of personalized routine where it goes through some actions that they find to be useful or meaningful when they're feeling lonely or when they're feeling pain. And then a routine that is more standard and just based on existing literature about things that can help when we're lonely or feeling pain, from humor to playing games and kind of mental challenge and stimulation. We'll divide folks into two groups in Lincoln and Omaha, and they'll each interact with one of those types of routines, and then we'll see what sort of influence those have.
Okay, very cool. And now you have an example of what a routine might be, right?
I do. So you can set up the routines really easily on your phone through the Alexa app. It probably heard me. Here's what the device looks like. And I created a routine quickly for this morning. Alexa, live and learn.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Let me try again. Alexa, live and learn.
Good morning. Silent film legend Charlie Chaplin was born on this day in 1889. I'd like to do a quick impression in his honor.
Yep.
Okay, very clever. So all you think you have to do
Alexa, stop.
So all you have to do is say good morning. So you've programmed this to all you say is good morning, and it will give you then the information that you have programmed it, whether it's news about entertainment or news about what's happening in the world or the weather or local headlines, any of those things.
Exactly, and you can set the keywords. So you can say good morning, you can say live and learn, as I did today. You can say, let's have coffee, and she'll go through whatever actions you ask it to.
Very good. Okay, so what are you hoping to accomplish by the end of this? And you did say that we're going to have, we've expanded this to how many participants are you hoping this time?
65.
65, okay.
Yep.
And so you're going to have some in Omaha, some in Lincoln. And what is your biggest hope when you gather all of this information back, which is a time-consuming process, right? This will be another year before you actually have those results.
Yeah. We hope to understand if this kind of proactive interaction can help with loneliness and pain, and if being able to kind of personalize your interactions can help with that too, and ultimately figure out if this is something that's useful to people like the person in your life, as well as the people in our study.
Now, do you know if the people at Eastmont are still using these? I mean, did they go, wow, this is great, I want to keep doing this?
I don't know. That is next on my list. I hope to be interviewing some folks in the next week or two.
Very good. Now, when is this actually going to start? You're still waiting. Is it going to be this next fall of 2021 when this actually gets going?
Yep, the next study will start, yes, in the fall. So it's being approved by the research board right now.
Very good. Valerie, this is such a great project, and I think it has such potential. I wish you the greatest success with it. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us today, and we'll look forward to having you back another year or so and give us the results.
That'll be great. Thanks for your time. It was a great time.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. Stay safe and stay active. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachia. You know, this is my first time back in the studio since like March 2020, so it's kind of fun to be back in the real world, and we have this new desk situation, and it's pretty fun. So I'd really like to thank our friends Bo and Jamie in LNK TV and executive producer Dave Norris from Aging Partners for allowing us to continue to bring you fresh shows for the last year using Zoom technology. But it's really great to be back in the studio, and my guest today is Quinn Lewandowski. He is a policy analyst, policy research specialist at the University of Nebraska's Public Policy Center. And we're going to be talking today about kind of a difficult topic, which is suicide awareness and suicide prevention. And I'd just like to warn people that we're talking about that, and that if that's something that you're thinking about, that there is help. There's a suicide prevention hotline that we'll put the number on the screen so that you might want to, you need to be thinking about that or calling that number. You can also call 911 or call a friend. So but we're going to be talking about this today. You are managing a grant that the Policy Center got sometime in February that helps caregivers or people that work in long-term care facilities or nursing homes or facilities sort of in the suicide prevention space. So tell me about the grant, and then we'll talk a little bit more about suicide prevention in general.
Well, thanks for having me today, Kim.
Yeah, thanks.
So we are currently implementing a federal grant from the CDC, thanks to our partners also at Nebraska DHHS, where our main focus is equipping 50 long-term care facilities with an evidence-based practice called QPR, or also known as Question, Persuade, Refer. So how we're doing this is we're training 50 individuals in 50 different facilities to become trainers in QPR, and then from there they're able to train their staff in this evidence-based, potentially life-saving practice.
So we've used two sort of jargony terms now, evidence-based and QPR. So tell me what evidence-based means.
Yeah, evidence-based basically means that there's research that has been done on this practice to show that it is effective, that it does work, it does help save lives and connect people to resources. And then
and the other one is QPR.
QPR.
So explain what QPR is.
Yeah, so Question, Persuade, Refer, or QPR for short, is a practice where, number one, you ask a question. It's a very difficult question to talk about suicide and mental health. And then the P is for persuade. So if there is a positive answer that there is some concerns going on and other things of that nature, we're able to continue that conversation, keep them safe, persuade them to seek out that there's hope, there's help, and get them to resources. So that's where the R comes in, where we're able to refer them, whether it's taking them to the emergency room if it is a right now potential life or death situation, or to see a mental health provider or something, or get in contact and make an appointment with their doctor to possibly figure out some things going on.
I know you talked about how the question part is perhaps the hardest part. And so what are some examples of the kind of questions that people should be asking?
Yeah, so I mean, in talking about this topic, there are direct ways and there are indirect ways. So possibly the most direct would be something like, are you thinking about taking your own life, or are you thinking about suicide? Indirect, maybe like, I've noticed that you've been unhappy lately. Tell me more about what's going on. The other indirect way would be like, have you ever thought, would you like to go to sleep and not wake up? Something like that. So that's especially asking that question. It seems so simple,
right?
But oftentimes it's often the most difficult.
Well, there's so much stigma about suicide, and that's one of the things that we really need to address, is the stigma, the fear that if you talk about it, that's going to make somebody take the next step. But actually, if you talk about it, that's probably going to divert them. Mm-hmm. Am I right on that? Or?
Yeah. So especially, when you're in a mental health crisis or anything of that nature, what's really helpful in kind of healing, oftentimes when we're depressed or anything, we tend to close up. Mm-hmm. But especially asking those open-ended questions and starting a conversation can really make a big difference in helping that person get help sooner.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, did we see incidences of suicidal ideation and attempts among caregivers go up, or even just among everybody? I mean, I'm just wondering how the pandemic, and it's not like we're out of it, but it's, this is an ongoing problem. So, what have you noticed? I know that you work a lot in the space of suicide prevention. So.
Yeah. So I'm also the president of the Nebraska State Suicide Prevention Coalition, and back in 2019, also our state experienced a major flood that really affected a lot of people's lives and livelihoods, and then we followed it up with 2020 with a worldwide pandemic. So we have seen a vast increased amount of stress, on caregivers, on families, and everything in between. So we have started to see that correlation, after our kind of natural fight or flight kind of reduces, we're left with kind of our thoughts and our feelings and other things of that nature. So there has been an increase of suicide ideation, attempts and completions, across most demographics.
So is there one demographic that's more at risk than others?
Yeah, so great question. Suicide is still the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24. So our youth kind of categories. It also is an extreme here in Nebraska. It also is, it's not the leading cause of death, but it is still statistically significant compared to nationally, especially for our men of the middle age, so 45 and up, and everything in between, especially white older males. Also, we see it a lot that men of the middle age, we see some definite signs and statistics that are concerning. So this is a really important kind of thing.
So this QPR training that you're offering to the long-term care facility people, that this would seem to me to be something that would be useful in any sort of work situation or a family situation or anything. Is that?
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah. QPR is, it's very purposefully named because it's a lot like CPR. It's a practice that you hope you never have to use, but it's important to know and important to be able to utilize if you think you may need it. Of course, with mental health, you may not see the signs and symptoms as easily, but QPR does a great job of addressing how to recognize if somebody may be experiencing a mental health crisis, and taking it from there. So this QPR is a practice that, it can be taught to, young adults, anybody in between. In fact, our behavioral health regions like Region 5 here in Lincoln offer monthly virtual training for people that are interested in becoming QPR trained. So it is out there and is especially useful for any Nebraskan or any American to know.
I know when I went to the state prevention website that you talked about earlier, I did notice that there were places where you could kind of sign up to take this kind of training virtually, and that's if you take the training virtually or even in person, I suppose. You told me that you get literature and different like workbooks and things that will help you.
Yeah.
Go through.
So especially the training's pretty short, especially if you're going as a participant. You get a nice little handy dandy booklet that kind of helps reinforce kind of what you talked about and what you learned. It also really reiterates some of the signs and symptoms, some helpful ways to ask the question, how to persuade somebody to resources and other things of that nature. Really just helps bring everything home. As well as generally with a QPR training, you get a little bit of practice with a partner or whoever in asking that question, which is fun to put people on the spot and really make them practice, because that's where it gets really valuable.
Well, it seems to me that if you train somebody in a care facility and then they train their staff to see symptoms among staff, but then they can also use it with patients and clients and maybe family members and other people. So it's kind of this real cool sort of network that happens that, just like what you say with CPR, the more people that know it and understand how to use it, it becomes more widespread. So are you also training like first responders and, like police and firefighters and ambulance drivers and things like that too?
Yeah, so like you said, it's really valuable to anybody. So especially QPR, there are, so many trainers already here in state. You can really seek out and find a QPR training pretty easily here in Nebraska, which is great to see. And it's really great, especially for my work. I get to see, the amount of trainings that are going on and stuff of that nature. To really see that spread and more people are equipped for that situation.
Yeah, so this is really a statewide effort and not just limited to Lincoln or Omaha or Grand Island or something. It's really because it's a statewide problem. It's not just limited to the big cities. It's everywhere, which is really, a tragic thing. It's very tragic. So, wow. What a cool project that you're working on. That's awesome. and especially we are starting in long-term care facilities, but especially if those people that are trained want to train their family members or community members, that's something that they're equipped to do. So it's really kind of a pay it forward kind of protocol. It's evidence-based, so it does work and it is effective in getting people help. Thanks. Quinn, we're out of time. I told you I would tell you when we're out of time, and we're out of time.
Thanks, Kim.
And really thank you for coming. I really appreciate this. This is really valuable information for a lot of people, I think. So, and I want to remind our viewers that it's never too late to live and learn how to engage with your life.